There's something eerie about flying at night, not just the silence or the hum of the engines, but that feeling when the world outside your window disappears into pure black. No stars, no cities, just a void, and inside the cabin everything goes quiet. Too quiet, like the plane isn't just crossing airspace, but drifting through some forgotten layer of reality, a place between places, and in that strange liminal space, sometimes something else finds its way in. If you enjoy unsettling stories like this, it would mean a lot if you subscribe to Char TV, gave the video a like, and turned on notifications. Now, lean back, close your tray table, and whatever you do, don't look out the window. This is Mason, and you're watching Char TV. I was never afraid of flying. I've taken more flights than I can count. Long hauls, red eyes, international connections. Airports feel like second homes to me at this point. But there was one flight, just one, that still keeps me up at night. It was 2018, and I was flying from Los Angeles to Sydney. A brutal 15-hour red-eye over the Pacific Ocean. The kind of flight where you take a sleeping pill, throw on a movie, and try to forget you're trapped in a metal tube above 30,000 feet of open water. I had a window seat, which I usually liked. Something about seeing the clouds below made me feel at ease. My row was mostly empty, just me and an older woman in 34C, 2 seats away. We nodded at each other politely but didn't talk. Takeoff was smooth. I settled in, ate my tray of rubbery airline pasta, and flipped through the in-flight movies. The cabin lights dimmed and one by one passengers dozed off. That's when I first felt it. A pressure change in the air. Like when someone walks past you and you catch their movement in your peripheral vision. I glanced toward the window. The sky was pitch black outside, just the occasional glint of moonlight on the wing. The Pacific stretched below us, dark, endless, untouched. And then something moved. Just for a second, a shadow shifting against the night sky. I frowned and leaned closer, trying to see if it was a reflection from the cabin lights. But my screen was off. The lights were too dim. I shook it off, telling myself I was just tired. But that feeling, the sense of something just outside my field of vision, wouldn't go away. I put on a movie, something familiar to distract myself. Eventually, I drifted off. I don't know how long I was asleep, but I woke up to a noise, a soft tapping, rhythmic, deliberate. I sat up disoriented, the cabin still bathed in that eerie blue glow from the overhead lights. Most people were asleep. A flight attendant passed by slowly, barely making a sound, and then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. I turned toward the window, my breath catching in my throat. There was a hand, pressed against the outside of the glass, fingers long and too thin, splayed out like it was searching for something. The skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over bones that didn't look entirely human. The hand dragged downward, leaving behind a faint streak of moisture. Condensation, like someone exhaling against the cold surface. I froze. My body refused to move. And then, slowly, it pulled away, just enough for me to see the face behind it. A man, or at least something that looked like a man. His eyes were huge, too wide, and entirely black, like a shark's eyes, reflecting nothing back. His mouth was messed up, the corners stretched too far, like someone had pulled at the edges of his lips. His skin looked wet, almost like it had been soaked in salt water for hours. I wanted to scream, wanted to unbuckle my seatbelt and run, but I couldn't, because he was looking right at me. And then he smiled. Not a normal smile, too wide, too many teeth, and then he raised his hand again, this time with one single finger pointing at me, a slow, deliberate motion, like he was choosing me. I snapped out of it, shoving myself back against my seat so hard that my tray table rattled. My hands scrambled for the call button, slamming it over and over. A flight attendant appeared instantly, eyes sleepy but alert. "Sir, are you okay?" I turned back to the window. Nothing. Just the black sky and the endless ocean below. The streak on the glass was gone. I was shaking, heart pounding against my ribs. I looked up at her, eyes wide. There was someone outside. She blinked. "Sir, that's not possible." I looked back. Of course it wasn't possible. There was nothing out there but sky. I tried to calm myself down. I forced a laugh, rubbing my hands over my face. Yeah, I know. I must have been dreaming. She smiled politely, nodded, and left. But as she walked away, I saw it. For just a second, a wet footprint near the emergency exit, a single drip of water sliding down the side of the door, and I knew I hadn't been dreaming. I don't remember what time it was exactly, but it had to be somewhere past midnight, that strange dead zone on a long-haul flight when everything gets too quiet, and even the air feels different. I was flying back to England from Hong Kong, a 13-hour red-eye that I'd booked last minute. The flight was mostly full, but not packed, and by the time we were somewhere over Central Asia, most of the passengers had already dozed off. I was sitting in 38A, a window seat near the back, but not all the way. I remember because I had a clear view of the aisle, which was empty apart from the occasional flight attendant passing by. The plane was dimly lit, just the glow from a few reading lights and the faint flicker of a movie playing on someone's screen. The atmosphere was strange, not quite right. Maybe it was just exhaustion, but there was this weird pressure in the air, like the feeling you get when a storm is coming. I had my headphones in, but after a while I took them off, just to listen. Silence. That was the first thing that felt wrong. On a plane, even when people are asleep, you can always hear something. The low murmur of an engine, the rustling of blankets, the occasional cough. But for a few moments it felt like all of it had stopped, like the entire plane was holding its breath. I shook it off, chalked it up to jet lag, and went back to my movie. Then, about 6 hours in, I needed to use the bathroom. I stood up, stretched a little, and started down the aisle toward the back of the plane, where the toilets were. Most of the passengers were asleep, heads tilted awkwardly against seat backs, eyes closed behind flimsy eye masks. The whole cabin had that stale, recycled air smell, mixed with the faint scent of microwaved meals and coffee. I reached the back of the plane. Something was there. At first I thought it was a trick of the dark. A shape, tall, unnaturally tall, standing completely still in the space near the last row of seats. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe a flight attendant stretching their legs, maybe a passenger standing in the aisle. But the longer I looked, the more I realized it wasn't either of those things. This thing. It was huge. 7 feet, maybe more. Its head was bent, crooked at an unnatural angle, like it couldn't fully fit in the cabin without pressing against the ceiling. And it was dark, not just shadowy, but wrongly dark, like it was sucking up the dim light around it. And the face. I can't explain it properly. It wasn't just a face, it was too much of a face. Like something had taken pieces from different people and stitched them together, but in the wrong order. The eyes were too deep, the mouth too long, the skin somehow blurred at the edges, like it wasn't fully solid. I froze, my hand still on the headrest of a nearby seat. It wasn't moving, just standing there, at the very back, in the unlit space by the emergency exit door. Something in my body screamed at me not to move. I felt this pressure in my chest. Not quite fear, but something worse. Like acknowledging it was a mistake. Like now that I had seen it, it had seen me. My pulse hammered in my ears. I didn't breathe. And then it twitched. Not a shift, not a step, just this horrible, jerky twitch, like its body had momentarily glitched. That was enough. I turned so fast I nearly tripped, fumbling back toward my seat without looking back. My hands were clammy, my throat dry, and every part of me felt like I was seconds away from being grabbed. I collapsed into 38A, heart slamming against my ribs. I stared straight ahead, too afraid to turn around. The plane was completely silent again. I sat there for what felt like forever, ears straining for any sound, any movement. The flight attendants didn't come by. Nobody else got up. Eventually, I forced myself to breathe normally. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overtired, dehydrated. Maybe I had hallucinated it in the dark. Eventually, I worked up the courage to glance back down the aisle. There was nothing there, just the darkened rows of sleeping passengers. I didn't sleep for the rest of the flight. I kept my seatbelt fastened, my eyes locked on the little screen in front of me, pretending everything was normal. But when we landed at Heathrow and the passengers started standing up, stretching, grabbing their bags from the overhead compartments, I turned toward the back one last time. One of the flight attendants was standing near the emergency exit, securing the area. the same spot where the thing had been. As I walked past her, I hesitated. I didn't even know what I was going to ask. Maybe something subtle, maybe nothing at all. But before I could say anything, she looked at me. And in a quiet, flat voice, she said, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I've been a flight attendant for 6 years now. I've seen a lot of weird things at 30,000 feet. Drunk passengers, medical emergencies, a guy who tried to light a cigarette in the lavatory. But nothing comes close to Flight 739 from Tokyo to San Francisco. It happened in 2019, a routine international flight. Full plane, about 300 passengers, all checked in, all accounted for. The boarding process was smooth, and by the time we reached cruising altitude over the Pacific, everything felt normal. Until we did the final passenger count. Now, if you've never worked in aviation, you might not know how strict we are about this. Every airline has a manifest, a precise, accurate list of who is on board. We check it before takeoff and double-check it after the doors are closed. So when I walked down the aisle, quietly counting heads, I wasn't expecting anything to be off. But there was one extra, 301 passengers. I counted again, same number. I went to my coworker, a senior attendant named Yuki, and asked her to do a silent recount. I watched as she walked row by row, eyes flicking over each seat. When she came back, she looked uneasy. "There's one too many." That was impossible. Every seat had a name, every ticket had been scanned. I pulled out the manifest and scanned the rows, comparing names, checking seat numbers, and then I found it, 24B. That seat was not assigned to anyone, but it was occupied. I looked up, my stomach twisting. A man sat there, mid-40s, wearing a black jacket, hands resting on his lap. He looked normal, not suspicious, not strange, just ordinary. His eyes were closed, like he was asleep. I double-checked the manifest, triple-checked. No one was supposed to be in that seat, I whispered to Yuki. Did he move from another seat? She shook her head. I don't think so. I would have noticed. We needed to handle this quietly. The last thing we wanted was to alarm the other passengers. So I did what we were trained to do. I approached with a polite, professional smile. "Excuse me, sir." He didn't react. I tried again, slightly louder. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" Nothing. I glanced at Yuki. She gave me a nervous look. The other passengers in the row didn't seem to notice anything wrong, like they weren't even aware of him. I hesitated, then gently touched his shoulder. His head snapped toward me, not like someone waking up, too fast, too stiff. His eyes flicked open, and I swear to God, for a split second they were wrong. Not black, not glowing, not anything obviously unnatural. Just off, empty, like he wasn't actually seeing me. I took a step back, suddenly uneasy. "Sir," I tried again, keeping my voice steady, "I just need to confirm your boarding pass." For a long second, he didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, staring at me. Then, without a word, he reached into his jacket. I tensed, heart hammering, thinking he was going for something, but all he pulled out was a crumpled piece of paper. Not a ticket, not a boarding pass, just a blank, torn scrap. He held it up like it meant something, like it proved he was supposed to be there. My mouth felt dry. I nodded stiffly, backing away. "Thank you, sir." I turned to Yuki, keeping my voice low. "I don't know what the hell this is, but he's not on the manifest." She was already on it, quietly making her way to the flight deck to inform the captain. I returned to my duties, stealing glances at 24B. He didn't move, didn't eat, didn't drink, just sat there, eyes forward, hands still clutching that useless piece of paper. Then about 2 hours later, something even stranger happened. Yuki came back, pale. The captain checked the system. And... She swallowed. "There is no 24B. I stared at her. "What?" She held out the printed seating chart. Row 24 only had 2 seats, A and C, no B. I felt cold all over. I turned, looking back toward his row, and the seat was empty. The black jacket, the man, the blank paper in his hand, gone. I rushed to the passengers nearby. "Did you see where the man in 24B went?" They all looked at me like I was crazy. "There was never anyone there," one of them said. I didn't argue. I just walked away, stomach in knots, pulse thudding in my ears. We landed in San Francisco at 7:45 a.m. I helped with deplaning, standing at the front, watching each passenger as they stepped off. I counted again. 300 passengers, exactly what we started with. After everyone was gone, I walked back to row 24. The seatbelt was neatly tucked, no sign that anyone had sat there. But when I reached down to check the floor, my fingers brushed against something. A crumpled piece of paper, the same kind he had been holding. I smoothed it out with trembling hands. It was still blank. I was 22 when this happened. Still young, still figuring things out. It was early 2019, just a few months after my first real breakup, the kind that messes with your head more than you expect it to. I was flying from Denver to Phoenix, a short 2-hour flight. I remember because I had flown the route a bunch of times before. Easy trip, no connections, no layovers, just a straight shot down to Arizona. It was supposed to be a fresh start. I'd been in Denver for almost a year, trying to build something with a girl I thought I was going to marry. It didn't work out. She ended things, and after a couple weeks of drinking too much whiskey and sleeping too little, I decided to pack up and head south, crash with an old friend in Phoenix, try to clear my head. I had a window seat toward the back, and to be honest, I was already a little buzzed before I even boarded. A few drinks at the airport bar, not enough to be sloppy, but enough to smooth the edges, enough to keep me from thinking too hard about everything. I remember takeoff perfectly. The sky was clear, the sun dipping low over the Rockies, that soft golden light stretching across the cabin. I had my earbuds in, an old The Strokes album playing, and for the first time in weeks, I actually felt at ease. Then I fell asleep. I didn't mean to. I just let my head rest against the window, the hum of the engine settling into the background, and the next thing I knew, I woke up, and something was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the dark. The sun had been setting when we left, but outside my window, total blackness. No city lights, no distant highways, nothing but empty sky. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Something about it felt off. Most flights, even at night, still have some kind of noise. The murmur of passengers, the ding of seatbelt signs, the occasional cough from someone a few rows up. But this? Nothing. I sat up, blinking away sleep, my mouth dry. My phone was still in my lap. I clicked the screen. Dead. That didn't make sense. I was at 80% when we took off. I pulled out my earbuds. The plane was still moving, but the air inside felt heavy, stale, like a pressure change before a storm. I turned to the guy next to me, middle-aged, wearing a blue hoodie. He was staring straight ahead, eyes locked on the seat back in front of him. I cleared my throat. Hey, do you know how much longer we have? He didn't react, didn't blink, just sat there. A cold feeling crept up my spine. I twisted around in my seat, looking toward the aisle. Most of the passengers were asleep, or at least they looked asleep. Heads slumped forward, bodies completely still. Too still. I glanced up at the in-flight screen. You know the one, the map that shows your location, altitude, estimated time of arrival? It was blank, just a black screen with the airline's logo, frozen mid-animation. My stomach tightened. I turned back to the window, hoping to see something, anything, a coastline, a city, the glow of Phoenix in the distance. But there was still just blackness, no stars, no clouds, no ground. I unbuckled my seatbelt, swallowing hard. My throat was dry, my heart starting to pick up speed. I needed to talk to someone. I needed to hear someone say, "It's fine. We're just circling before landing." I stepped into the aisle. The plane felt weird under my feet, like it was vibrating at a frequency I couldn't quite register. The flight attendants were gone. I walked toward the front, passing row after row of motionless passengers. Some had their eyes closed, some didn't, but none of them moved. I reached the curtain that separated economy from first class, pulled it back. No one there. I turned toward the cockpit. The door was shut, but something stopped me from knocking. Something deep in my gut screamed at me not to. Instead, I turned toward the small galley kitchen near the exit door, looking for anything. A radio, an intercom, something to tell me what the fuck was happening. That's when I saw the clock. 4 hours, 17 minutes. That's how long we had been in the air. Not 2 hours, not 3, 4. I stumbled back, suddenly dizzy, gripping the side of a seat. That wasn't possible. This flight wasn't supposed to be more than 2 hours and 15 minutes tops. I took a shaky breath trying to think. Could we have been rerouted, delayed? But there had been no announcement, no turbulence, no indication that anything had changed. Then, a ding. The seatbelt sign turned on. I spun around. The passengers were still frozen, still locked in place like mannequins. Then, one by one, they started to turn their heads toward me. Every single one of them. Not fast, not all at once, just slowly, deliberate, like they had only just noticed I was there. I took a step back, my breath caught in my chest. My legs felt weak. My vision blurred at the edges. The intercom crackled. A voice, low, warped and eerie, came through the speaker. "Please return to your seat." I couldn't breathe. The voice wasn't the captain's. I turned, heart hammering, and practically sprinted back to my row. Collapsed into 23A, buckled my seatbelt with shaking hands. The second I did, the hum of the engine seemed to change. The cabin lights flickered, and then the city lights appeared, just like that. I blinked, my stomach twisting. Outside my window, I could see the familiar grid of Phoenix, the streets glowing in the night. The plane tilted toward the runway as if nothing had happened. I whipped my head around. The guy next to me was still there, flipping through a magazine like everything was normal. The flight attendants were back, walking up and down the aisle, collecting trash, checking seatbelts. The in-flight screen flickered on. Flight time, 2 hours, 12 minutes. I felt sick. The plane landed smoothly, taxied to the gate. Passengers stood up, stretching, yawning, grabbing their bags. I sat there, feeling like my brain was splitting in half. When it was my turn, I grabbed my backpack and hurried toward the exit. My legs felt wobbly, like I had just gotten off a roller coaster. I hurried toward the exit, legs wobbly, my heart still hammering in my chest. The second I stepped into the terminal, I made a beeline for a charging station near the gate. I fumbled for my cable, plugged my phone in, and waited as the screen flickered to life. 7:37 p.m., exactly when we were supposed to land. I exhaled, trying to convince myself I had imagined everything. Maybe I was just overtired. Maybe I had dreamed it. And then I saw him, the pilot. He was standing near the gate just past the jet bridge, watching the passengers file out. Watching me. He didn't move, didn't check a clipboard, didn't talk to the crew, just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, his eyes locked onto mine, like he knew, like he was waiting. You've been watching Char TV. Thanks for spending part of your night here with me. If you enjoyed the ride, take a second to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And remember, next time you're flying through the dark, when the cabin goes quiet and the clouds vanish into black, you might not be as alone as you think. Sleep well, or try to.